You're listening to Expertly Said, a podcast on the art and impact of communication. I'm Kristen Sweeney, founder and CEO of Every Little Word. My guest today is Steve Jamieson, manager of field communications at Novo Nordisk. Steve is a former TV sports anchor who's passionate about the need to tell stories and highlight those around him. He pivoted his career to pharmaceutical sales in 2005, first at Eli Lilly and Company, then at Takeda Pharmaceuticals, and currently at Novo Nordisk, where he's field communications manager. At Novo Nordisk, Steve has found ways to integrate his background in video production to engage sales representatives nationwide and strengthen his own personal brand. Steve, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, and we met recently at the Fierce Pharma Conference, where you evangelized a bit about the power of video. So we've got some kind of different perspectives on communication here, and really looking forward to this conversation.
Absolutely, me too.
Before we get there, though, I'd love to harken back and chat a little bit about your background in broadcasting. Can you share a little bit about that path?
Absolutely. So I went to Ohio University in Athens, Ohio, and loved it, had a great experience there. They warned us in school that you would be going to begin your career in the middle of nowhere and make next to nothing, and they were right. And so my first job was in Scottsbluff, Nebraska, the Western Panhandle. And that was eye-opening and sure was making next to nothing. It was 1998, and I was pulling down a cool $12,000 a year, to which my mother replied, that's less than teachers make. And I said, I know, Mom, but I'm not going to grad school. I'm going to a CBS affiliate. I have to start my career.
Yeah.
So I did that. I started there for a year and a half. I was tired of my parents always asking, what time is it there? So I moved back to the East Coast and I got a job in Maryland at an NBC affiliate. And that's how I got to, I'm still in Maryland today. But we did that for another, 5 years, I guess. So I did about 7 years total in television at some point, and realized that just wasn't the path forward for me. But how could I use that skill set to do something else? And I had some friends who were doing careers in pharmaceutical sales, doing well. And so I just flexed. I traded in teleprompter for a detailed piece. And if I can ask Ray Lewis why he missed a tackle, I can certainly ask a doctor why he's not writing our medicines. So with that said, I got to start with Lilly in their diabetes products. Then I eventually, after 3.5 years, we had a co-promotion that ended with Takeda, and I liked selling the one product that they had, and I went over to Takeda to keep selling it. But then a couple realignments happened, and all of a sudden I was in Northern Virginia selling PPIs and talking heartburn all day, and I was like, this is not what I wanted to do. So there's an opening at Novo Nordisk, and I enjoyed selling in diabetes. I'd always kind of admired Novo Nordisk as a company, and so in 2012 when they had an expansion, I came on board, and I've been here ever since. But what's interesting is I was a rep, and I thought that was going to be my path, maybe a manager at some point. But then, like everybody else, the world kind of gets shaken up during COVID. And even though I looked at doing things at home office, which is in Princeton, New Jersey, I didn't think that was realistic. We weren't going to uproot our lives to go to New Jersey. But they had a remote rotation available, and in the cycle planning department, which plans the big meetings. And so I eventually took that rotation, saw what else was available in the organization, and eventually this role came open. It was a manager of field communications, and I jumped at the chance. And what's funny about this, Kristen, is that when I first got into this part of the job, there really was a small video component. It was not, I kind of American Idoled it. It made it my own, and it's interactive and fun, and so that's what we've done. And with how we met you at the meeting was through PlayPlay, my video software platform that I use at work. It's not a PlayPlay ad, but this is how I've engaged our sales force.
Can you talk a little bit about what those transferable skills are? I think it's particularly interesting at a time where you're seeing industry expertise and experience being top of many, many kind of job descriptions right now. But those of us who have had maybe less traditional career paths tend to feel like there's a lot that we can bring and maybe even benefit from having that outside perspective.
No, I totally agree. And it comes down to, first and foremost, when you're interviewing somebody and you're, whether I did news interviewing as well, it wasn't just sports related. I mean, that was fun to do sports, but to be an active listener, an active participant, and go off what they say and listen for, where am I going to take this interview? You don't know when you start an interview where it's going to go, and to be flexible. And same thing with the conversation with the doctor. You have no idea what road they're going to go down. You're listening for, is that a real objection or is that a leave me alone, buddy kind of objection? And so the ability to drill down and ask the appropriate questions, that skill set is valuable regardless of your industry. And I think being an active listener and not just having an agenda for how you want to drive the conversation. There's nothing worse than if you feel like you're not truly engaged in the discussion. That's where you lose people. And I think, I don't know how that shows up on a resume, but whether it's your emotional intelligence, what have you, I just think that's something that one of my things I have to hang my hat on when I talk about interviewing with folks is that if you know the red, blue, green, yellow quadrants, I'm a square in the Herman brain. I touch all the colors, so I can engage with someone who's a driver, someone who's compassionate, someone who's warm and fuzzy. I can find that way to connect with them in something that will resonate with them. So I take pride in that because some people have their personality. You have to conform to what I'm talking about, and my way or the highway. And I can go different ways with almost anyone I meet.
Yeah, exactly. And I love what you said about the conversations being a bit unknown. I think right now, just kind of in the business environment, I'll say there's a lot of emphasis on frameworks, and frameworks are kind of held up as like this way of maybe de-risking and kind of assuring quality and being these proven processes. And that's great. But there are many areas, and I think conversations with folks is one of them. We do interview a lot of subject matter experts, a lot of executives. So we end up creating what we call a lot of expert-led content, and based on their knowledge and insights. And kind of the whole point for me is if I knew everything you were going to say, I wouldn't need to be there in front of you in a conversation, right? Like the point is I want to hear the interesting nuggets, the personal stories, most people think this, but actually it's that, like all those kind of things that can only come from deep expertise and deep experience. And so you've got to be able to roll with the conversation because the whole point is you're trying to unearth something new. And if you are only willing to ask your 10 questions that you've scripted and sent out, or you send in someone who's too junior to really be able to pick up on something and say, like, let's dig a little deeper, you're not going to get the kind of raw material to create the end product that you're really looking for. Yeah,
totally agree. I love, recently I had a couple of discussions in office about, just kind of questioning the why behind the decision. And the answer was, well, historically, that's what we've done. I'm like, well, it's in the past. Yeah. Like we're living today.
Let's dig deeper. Yeah.
with today's budget and today's needs.
Yeah.
Is this something we should continue to do present day, or should we leave that behind? So we're reanalyzing some way we do things internally with a certain process, and it's just historically it's nice to know that's how we did it, but it's not necessarily the best way moving forward. Right.
That's one piece of information, but it doesn't preclude that being the decision forever. Exactly. So tell me a little bit. I am so curious about how the experience has changed for your role being primarily remote, when I think we all think of like, okay, you're managing reps in the field, that it would be, you in a suitcase 300 days a year traveling around. So tell me about, was there a point where that was more the experience for you, or how did you navigate that? I think you said you came on in a remote capacity. How did you navigate that transition? Was the company still evolving at that point in time?
Yeah, I think out of COVID, you had that uncertainty everyone had that uncertainty of can you do your job remotely, And so when I had the initial talent rotation and had a track record to back up that I will show up, I will be in the meetings, we can do this, and to execute time and time again on different projects. Once you have that background, then they entrust you to try something different in the role. So the beauty of what my job is there's reps nationwide that I'm interacting with, and it doesn't matter whether I'm at my house in Maryland or at home office in Princeton. I still need to be able to interact with them and engage with them in that way. So it was never as much traveling built in. That was never going to be something that would work in my life. But I do think the technology platforms, whether it's Microsoft Teams, Outlook scheduling, one-on-one interactions, have made it all the easier and kind of forced us to be better at working remotely. So I will say the Salesforce home office folks, we are, Ed and I, we are on Microsoft Teams all day. I mean, it's how we communicate. We ping each other, all these chat, and we have the channels and all the things. The field reps, not so much. They're in their tools that have their day-to-day calling on doctors and interacting with their materials, ordering samples, what have you. So that is a little bit more hand-holding when we set up those meetings. But once you get on the team itself and the meeting chat, you can let your guard down and be your authentic self.
Yeah, I think that the barrier of like face-to-face video versus being in person, there is something great about being in person. We were just at a conference and, I don't know that we would have had that happenstance interaction without it. But it does seem like post-COVID, several years out now, people are feeling more comfortable. Like a one-to-one video is still kind of that safe space to have the kinds of conversations you would have. It's interesting. We've always been a remote agency, so we're fully remote. I've honestly only ever met one of my team members in person. So one of the things we like to talk about is how tall we are. Right. And there are some big surprises in there, actually. Because it's like, what would it be like if I saw you? And one team member is like, I'm so much shorter than you think. And then another team member who's like much taller than we expected. And so
it's so funny you say that, because I had a teammate that literally she was so much shorter. The way she positioned her camera was such, I thought she was going to be like, 5'8", 5'9", whatever. And I was like, Lauren, is that? Because she was so much shorter than I mean, I did like a triple take. I'd seen her on Zoom or Teams meetings 100 times, but I was like, I'm not sure that's you, because I picture you so much taller.
Yeah, so. I remember the very first meeting I went to, I was in a new group for entrepreneurs, and I was just like, wow, everyone has legs. Like, just like seeing a bunch of people all at once was really interesting. Okay, so it talked about remote. I love that. I am curious, one of the things I really like to touch base on is audience for whoever I'm talking to, right? Who are you trying to communicate with, which we've talked about, the sales reps. Tell me a little bit about their needs. Like when you are working on your communications with them and for them, what are you trying to accomplish? What are the avenues in which, the considerations, like you said, they're not on Teams all day chatting. They're out in the field, driving around. So tell me a little bit about how those needs and then how you're able to take those into consideration.
Oftentimes, my role is more brand agnostic, so I don't necessarily talk about the brands that we have at Novo Nordisk that, people know all the jingles. I won't, berate you with those, but it can be motivational, just simply uplifting. It can be tying into an employee resource group. We have women at Novo Nordisk. We have veterans at Novo Nordisk. We have Living It, which is for patients, for employees who are actually on the products that we carry as well. So sometimes it's more of trying to build camaraderie around those groups. Oftentimes I'm working with the specific areas to get across the KPIs that the managers are for that month or that quarter are driving. But it varies so much. I've been really excited about some projects sometimes that I hadn't even thought of it. We had some issues with supply chain early on with when Ozempic really went crazy, and we had, our warehouses were working 24/7, trying to do the best they could to keep up with demand. And the team out in the West area was like, we should send them a thank you video. Like, thank you for working so hard. It's they're checking the clock, punching the clock every day, making more product, and do we appreciate it? We do. And so it was a real grassroots campaign, but they were some of the most fun, exciting videos that I made because it was genuine. People were like, "Thank you for doing what you're doing. You're making a difference for patients," and that was awesome. And I was like, yeah, let's do that. And those are the fun projects that happen. Sometimes people bring project ideas to me, and I'm like, how do you want to execute this? And let's talk through maybe some challenges you might have with this. And so that's where my role comes into, based on previous experience, helping them workshop and the ideation of where that thought can go, and is it practical or not. It's every day is different, every week's different, and that's what I love about the job. It's not too much unlike TV in that day. When I was broadcasting, every sportscast was different. Every day here at home office is different. You might get urgent fires that day need to put out, and other times we might have a project that was a week or two in development that you pull together.
I like your point about motivation. I mean, sometimes, obviously that's an important part of internal communications, is what we mean in some cases when we talk about employee engagement. But then you mentioned KPIs, which I think is that other side, which is making sure information is actually flowing down, that it's accurate, that it's relevant, that it's timely. Are you ever... are you breaking that audience down into further segments, and tailoring kind of regional communications and things like that as well? Yep. Is that a piece of it?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have 4 major areas: we have the East, South, Midwest, the West, and I think about as 17 years as a rep, I think about the challenges I faced come promotion time, come recognition. I'm trying to build a brand. How does that differ from the other 12 reps in my district, So I see video and tools like this. You have that gem of an idea. Okay, well, how do we make that happen? How can we, spread it out? And I think that, end of the year, we always say, at least on our promotion things, is how did you impact the region? Did you? I mean, if you can impact your district pretty easily, but your region and the area, which is the entire East Coast, how did you impact? So the platform that we have, if you have that idea, if someone comes to me, everyone knows I make these videos now. I think it's empowering that if you have a good idea and a good thought for a project and you want to impact the entire East area, you can. But I have done specific ones that only apply to a region or even a district. I'm not above any of these jobs. I think anybody who comes to me with an idea, I want them to grow and have that chance. So there's no project too small for me. I cut a video yesterday that was like a get well soon video. It took me 5 minutes, but I did it. So.
Yeah, the video guy. I love it. It's definitely building your personal brand. Can you talk a little bit about measurement? What are you looking for when you're kind of measuring, maybe not just video specifically, but impact, as you said, impact on the district, the region, impact on your team more broadly?
It's funny you asked about that, because it's something we are constantly evaluating. Our biggest tool in our department is our in-house intranet platform. So we keep looking at engagement, our newsfeed, how many stories are getting read, how many stories are interacted with, and I want that experience to be as natural and as engaging as possible. So from that standpoint, we do look at the metrics, from how many people are viewing this, how many people are logging in every week, how many times, how long are they staying on the platform, what time of day are they logging in, how many stories are they reading. All these things can be tracked now. And so from that standpoint, we are looking at it. And I mentioned it last week at that conference. We do see that the newsfeed stories that have videos are engaged with twice as much as the regular ones. It's just a fact of what we've seen. So I don't know whether it's the Instagramming of the world or whatnot, but I do think as a culture, with our attention span shrinking, it doesn't need to be a Martin Scorsese production, but having a video that can give a little bit of flavor to it, or a little piece of it, it can increase the eyeballs, or at least get the gist of what the context of what else was written was added to that story.
That's a perfect segue, I think, into what we want to talk about for our one big idea together, which is, as we were chatting about, my agency focuses on written communications primarily. We will work with video a little bit. You are a video evangelist, and have obviously made really effective use of that technology. And So just want to really have a little bit of back and forth there. From your perspective, you were sharing offline some of the things that you think video can really bring, not just it's a video, right? But like, what is it able to show about the person communicating, or what do you think is additive in terms of the communication when it's recorded?
I think, I will say I love writing. I love good writing. So I'll put that in the ether first and foremost. My degree is in journalism, so I've done plenty of writing courses. But good writing, writing that you know where it's going and it's concise. So from that standpoint, I joked at the conference last week. We've all been in that meeting that should have been an email, and why wasn't that meeting an email? Why is this email so long? Those what are they trying to convey here? Let's tighten it up. So, in my estimation, they're trying to convey something that they feel will be lost in the written word. Whether it's compassion, whether it's humor, whether it's sarcasm, or just their personality. There's something that you can say, you can convey that same message, but maybe save everyone's time. And we're also busy. So if attaching a 60 to 90 second video clip to an email makes you feel better about the news you're conveying, as opposed to a 30 to 60 minute meeting, that's a win for everybody. And you have produced that video, so you feel good about it. You've watched it. You think it hits the mark. How many times do you join a meeting and you walk out after the meeting and you're like, I don't know how that landed. I don't know if I got across what I was trying to convey. And even better, you left that meeting and it's over. Well, you can watch the video and be like, is that what he meant? Or watch it again. Now how is it? What did I miss? And there was a lot. He covered a lot there. By putting putting written word on the video, you can make sure that your key points are, landing. But it is a way to feel better about exactly what you wanted to cover in that meeting. You could have a PowerPoint deck and you could drone on for an hour, or you could just tighten it up and lay it out.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting because it makes me think about one of the ways we actually use videos internally and with clients, but we use it as a sort of meeting or a meeting replacement and an email shortener. So we use our tool is Loom, which is a screen recording software, and a lot of times we're sending a content asset over. Usually, most common use cases, we're sending something over for review to a client, and we're like, here it is. Here's a quick explainer, because if you've ever been on the receiving end of just here's a document, especially early on in a relationship or a project that's new, like that's a lot of uncertainty for a client opening something up and kind of going in, and there's a lot of room for misinterpretation, right? And so we find it's really helpful to say, like, here's what we were thinking about when we incorporated this, here's our approach, here's what we want you to focus on. And yes, it's all in the document, but there's a quick overview. That in a lot of cases would be a meeting or a very long email that is just a little bit more interactive. They can actually see the document we're talking about live on the screen. And similarly, we work very asynchronously on my team. A lot of Loom videos flying back and forth when we give feedback and edits and even content briefs. And I think that, like, I agree with what you said, that sometimes the gist is what's needed. And I actually find like video is a better use case in some cases when it's less specific. And, I can talk with you and I can sort of use my hands and my tone of voice and my excitement level and like to convey something, even if my words aren't 100% honed and specific, honestly. When you need to be super specific and clear, that is often when writing has that place, right? Like that idea is kind of fully worked through, it's set in stone. But when I'm just trying to communicate the gist, or I'm trying to engage with my workforce, remotely, like I don't want to necessarily just be an email signature sign off. Right. A message that could sound, you talked about that thank you message, right? A message that could probably sound pretty general in email could really have a different resonance and feel a lot more personal coming from an individual inside their organization. And I wonder, do you see any connection between maybe the rise of video or the impact video is having in your organization and some of the trends we're seeing around trust in individuals over trust in brand? So, we're seeing so many executives on LinkedIn. They're sort of reclaiming this idea as being a face or an ambassador of their brand versus having the brand being necessarily the dominant voice. Do you see video as kind of accompanying or being part of that movement?
I do think, as far as showing the type of person you are, one of the best compliments I ever got in television was I was out to dinner one night and someone had some fans recognize me. It didn't happen often, but once in a while, and they said, "You're just like you are on TV." And I was like, thank you. I'm not trying. I'm not like Steve Jamieson sportscast. It was me doing the sports, and but you could put on a persona to be a sportscaster or a newscaster and be disingenuous. So I do think from a professional standpoint, if video helps convey who you are truly and how you carry yourself and how your tone and how you operate, then it absolutely is a perfect medium. I mean, I thought about when you were just talking about written things being misconstrued. Even your closest friends, when you're texting with them, they might miss sarcasm. Even people who know you so well might miss that you're joking unless you put an LOL at the end. And it's those little things we do as a crutch to convey that I'm kidding. Like, didn't you get it? I'm kidding. That would just naturally be, whether it's a wink or just like the tone of your voice would be, you'd be able to convey that in video. And so I do think from someone asked the question during the conference last week, when is too much video a thing? I mean, it really is. It can be a thing. So you pick and choose your spots, but I do think it's also being aware of how long a video should be, and really forcing yourself to stick to that time limit. In television, if your story is going to go past a minute and a half, you have to talk to the news director and explain why it has to go past a minute and a half. You have to pitch your case. Same should be true for your personal videos. 60 seconds is probably the sweet spot. If you have a lot of meat, get to 90, but 2 minutes, maybe make it a 2-part series. I don't know. Do something different, but convey that a little differently to be respectful of your audience.
Yeah, I love that. And it makes me think about, you talking about being able to really authentically be yourself, but you've of course got some specific training and some specific background. I've seen in some of your videos that, it's not just you, right? You're incorporating a lot of other folks. So what do you offer to help people bring themselves forward on video if they are maybe feeling nervous or kind of overthinking it? I know this is something, honestly, that we've encountered, I think more for external communications, but sometimes executives don't have they want the big production. They want the super polished thing, and and there's a mental, I'm not sure I really want to do this component. And so somehow that project just never seems to happen, right? Somehow it's keeps getting pushed off the schedule. What are you able to do that helps folks kind of relax into it and just bring themselves onto the screen?
I think we are, as a culture, getting better about it. In my 3+ years of doing this role, I can only think of 1 or 2 people who were really just rough on camera, that weren't comfortable. I think first and foremost, it's reminding them that it's just you and the camera. Nobody's judging you. Send me your best takes. I don't need to see your errors or your flubs. If you don't love it, don't send it to me. If it's lit properly, you know what you want to say, I can give them tips and tricks for how they can sort of read but not read. Certainly, I don't think joining on reading a script comes across as natural. For that C-suite guy who's not into making videos, it's 2025. Like you have to. I have those discussions. It's a job expectation.
Yeah.
So I'm fortunate. Play has this avatar feature, and they want to talk about that's a way you could have a virtual person talk for your organization. It could have a different accent. You could pick male, female, whatever you want to do. In my industry, I'm fortunate that the majority of the representatives are comfortable talking to people. So from that standpoint, it's an opportunity to show themselves, to springboard your career, embrace it. Don't be afraid of it. This is your chance. And so send me your best video. Send me your best clip that you think conveys what I'm asking you to do for that specific project.
And then from what I understand, you've also kind of lowered the barrier, right, on production value. You're talking well lit, you're talking shoot it with your phone, but
turn it sideways. Please please give me the horizon. I don't need to see, because then I have black on both sides. When I started in television, basically you had a VHS deck on your hip that had an umbilical cord that would connect from the deck to the camera itself. I mean, the technology was so primitive, it's criminal. So we have so much better video technology in our phone and on our laptops than I ever dreamed of. I mean, analog editing was so challenging. So they have eliminated so many barriers when it comes to making a good, well-produced video. You can use, filters and whatnot. I had none of those things. If it wasn't well lit, it wasn't well lit, and that was it. There was no tweaks I could do on the back end to make it brighter, or do it black and white, or use this tone. I had none of that. So we have it really good technology-wise, and just embrace it. It doesn't need to be, I touched on it a little bit. Whatever your budget is for an outside vendor video production, you could probably bring it in-house for a lot cheaper if you just took that leap. That's just one of the things that's worked out really well for us, especially end of the year when people are analyzing budgets and whatnot. What your total spend is, think on it. If your spend is, tens of thousands of dollars, if it's over $100,000, you could easily make those videos yourself for half the cost.
Yeah. Or do more with that budget, right? Like still, sure. I'm sure you all still have production teams reserved. Yeah, but actually be able to get more done. And that's something we find too sometimes when we're working with pharma companies is they want to accelerate their content creation, and we're able to be that accelerant for them. So maybe same budget they might have with honestly a big agency, it can go a bit further with us.
I've never produced any of those direct to consumer ads that are on TV all the time. Those are big time. That's not what I do. What I do deals with the sales force itself in the field. Yeah,
it's funny what you were saying. I think my grandfather had maybe one generation, because his VHS tape went in the video recorder that was on his arm, but he was kind of famous in my college, again, theater major, for videotaping like all my voice recitals and stuff. He was back there and they'd be like, is there a news crew here?
Right. Yeah. And I will say that's the other tip I give folks when they're on camera is, yes, that's how you look, and yes, that's how you sound. Hate to break it to you, that's your voice. And you have to, if you haven't figured it out by now, that's how you sound. It's okay, But
I can relate to that. Being a theater performer, the first TV class I ever took where I'd actually watch myself was horrifying. And then you kind of get over it and move on. But here I am all these years later. So I want to transition us now exactly into our lightning round section, which is called The Last Word. So I ask every guest the same 5 questions. So just go with your gut on the answers. You ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
All right. Question 1. What's your favorite word to say out loud?
I think I give it some thought. I think it's shenanigans.
Oh, that's a good one.
Shenanigans to me, even though it's got a little bit of mystery and intrigue to it, it's usually a fun night. If you got into some shenanigans, nobody was hurt. It was a good
Not
time. Not
dangerous, but yeah.
No. But we're up in the bar. It's not just, we're getting together. Oh, we're getting into some shenanigans. Like something's going to happen tonight that'll be ridiculous and we'll laugh about later.
Nice. Question 2. What's a word you know from reading, but you're afraid to say it out loud because you're not 100% sure how to pronounce it?
So this touched, something deep in my soul from my sportscasting days, because you'd see names you had to say. Someone sort of does a highlight and you're like, oh, that name is brutal. How do you break it down phonetically? So I didn't go that route, but for me, it's Worcestershire. Like I know it's Worcestershire sauce. I could see it, but it's always like, is it Worcester looks like it's even chefs get tongue tied talking about it. I've heard kiss your sister sauce. I've heard all kinds. It's Worcestershire, but it's a tongue tire every time I see it.
When I first moved up to the Boston area, I was definitely someone who was like, are we going to Worcester today? I didn't know. So I learned quickly.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's one phrase or saying you wish you could be retired for good?
This is tough, because there are a lot of phrases that I could circle back to later, and we certainly could put a pin in things. But I have a colleague, and he knows this, and he wouldn't take umbrage to this, but in meetings he will talk about squaring the circle, and it gets every time it always kind of confuses people, because they've heard it but they don't 100% know what it means. And it means like doing the impossible. You square the circle, but it inevitably opens a can of worms where people are confused. They want to circle the square, and we start. It will rabbit hole the meeting for a good 3-4 minutes every time he brings it up, and I'm like, why did we square the circle again? Like, why? We've had this discussion before. It just it goes nowhere, and it just ends up making the meeting longer. So
nice. Question 4. What's a communication hill you're willing to die on?
I would say that anybody can make a good video.
Love it.
I really think that technology has come along in such a way that if you want to get your feet wet and be uneasy for an hour or so, you can make a decent video.
Question 5. What's the last thing you read, heard, or watched that really stuck with you?
I mean, I watch a lot of good TV, so I thought about this back and forth. But the last thing I read, and I thought about this, was I actually grabbed the book, Smart Brevity, by the folks who did Axios and Politico. Great read. It's concise. It's perfect for.
It would have to be.
And that's part of the challenge, right? Is that they're trying to hold themselves to it. But as someone who's been called verbose before in a job interview, that makes me a good podcast guest, but not if you're trying to get hired for a job necessarily. So there's all kinds of great tricks in that book that apply to all facets of life, whether it's the written word, the broadcasting. But I think given what we've kind of touched on, the attention spans and the challenges we have with communicating these days, it's a great tool.
Wonderful. Steve, thank you so much for joining us today. If listeners want to learn more about you, where can they find you?
I thought about this. Find me on LinkedIn.
Perfect.
I think this is the best way to connect. I'm certainly happy to talk about my experiences, whether it's in pharma or television. But I'd love to connect with somebody on that platform. That's really the best way. I have no product myself that I'm promoting, anything like that. But I'm always willing to connect and chat with folks. That's how we met, so sure.
Exactly. All right. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate you being here.
Happy to be here. Thanks so much. It was a lot of fun.
That's it for this episode of Expertly Said. We're produced by Every Little Word, a boutique content and communications agency. If you liked what you heard, you know what to do. Subscribe, share the episode with a colleague, or leave us a review. If you want to connect with me directly, please do. You can find me on LinkedIn. Just search Kristen Sweeney. Thanks for listening. Talk soon.